My parents disowned me for being black, but now they want me to pay for their retirement. I was 16 when my parents told me I wasn't their child. Not in the legal sense. I still carried their last name, still existed in their family tree, but in every other way that mattered, they had erased me. "We didn't sign up for this," my mother had said, her voice flat, her arms crossed as if she were discussing a stranger. "You're nothing like us." My father didn't even look at me. He just sat in his chair, jaw clenched, staring at the floor like I was a problem too big to fix. I had always known they were uncomfortable with me. With my skin, my features, the way I didn't fit into their world of pale faces and perfect suburban normalcy. But I had never thought they'd actually say it out loud, that they'd make it clear I was nothing more than a stain on their lives, an inconvenience they regretted. That night, I packed a bag and left. They didn't stop me. They didn't even ask where I was going. And that was the last time I ever saw them. Or at least, that's what I thought. Because years later, after everything I had been through, after the nights I spent sleeping in shelters, the years of clawing my way out of poverty, the endless fight to prove I was worth something without them, they came back, not with apologies, not with regret, but with demands. The first time I heard from them again, I almost didn't recognize my mother's voice. "Sweetheart," she said, her tone so artificial it made my skin crawl. "It's been so long." I stayed silent, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles ached. Sweetheart, sweetheart. The same woman who once told me she wished she had never adopted me, who treated me like I was a mistake she couldn't undo, was now speaking to me like I was a long-lost treasure. She didn't wait for me to respond. "Your father and I have been struggling," she continued, sighing dramatically. "Money is tight. You know how hard things are these days." I almost laughed. No, I knew how hard things were. I had lived it. I had crawled through the worst of it while they pretended I didn't exist. And now suddenly they remembered me? "I see," I said, keeping my voice steady. Her relief was obvious. "Oh, thank God. I told your father you'd understand. We're family, after all." Family. That word tasted like poison coming from her mouth. She didn't even hesitate before dropping the real reason for her call. "We need help," she said. "Financial help. Just enough to get us through retirement. You're doing well now, right? It's the least you can do." The least I could do. As if I owed them anything. As if I hadn't spent years barely surviving while they lived comfortably, pretending I had never existed. I exhaled slowly, my grip on the phone loosening. I had spent my whole life waiting for them to care. And now, I realized they never would. They only wanted me now because they needed something. I let the silence stretch between us, savoring the discomfort creeping into my mother's voice. She had expected gratitude, maybe even guilt, some pathetic need for approval that would make me rush to their aid. But I wasn't that helpless, abandoned kid anymore. "Where was this family when I needed a place to sleep?" I asked finally, my voice calm but razor sharp. "Where was it when I was starving? When I had to work 2 jobs just to afford a mattress on a stranger's floor?" She sighed, the kind of exhausted, put-upon breath she used to let out when she was annoyed with me. "That was a long time ago," she said, dismissive, like years of rejection could be brushed away with a few words. "We all make mistakes." I clenched my jaw. Mistakes were forgetting a birthday, saying something hurtful in the heat of an argument. What they had done? That wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. A choice. One they made over and over again, every single day they left me out in the cold. She must have sensed she was losing control because her tone shifted. Softer now. Sweeter. "We didn't know how to handle things back then," she tried again. "But you turned out amazing, didn't you? Strong, successful. I always knew you would be." I almost laughed. I could hear the desperation creeping in, the subtle manipulation. She didn't see me as a person. She saw me as a paycheck. "You don't get to rewrite history," I said, my voice steady. "You abandoned me. Not because you didn't know how to handle things, but because you wanted to." A beat of silence. Then, her voice turned cold. "So that's it? You're just going to turn your back on us?" The hypocrisy would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Me turning my back on them? I shook my head, letting out a slow breath. "I didn't turn my back on you," I said. "You made it clear a long time ago that I was never part of this family." She inhaled sharply, caught off guard by how easily I threw the truth back at her. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head, trying to find a way to guilt me, to make me feel like the heartless one in this situation. But it wasn't going to work. Not this time. "Don't call me again," I said simply. "Not unless it's to apologize. Not just for what you did, but for who you are." I hung up before she could respond, staring at my phone for a long moment. There was no satisfaction, no grand sense of victory. Just a quiet, steady peace settling into my bones. Days passed, then a week, and for a while the silence was enough to make me think my mother had finally understood. Maybe she had realized that no amount of manipulation would work this time. But then, just as I was beginning to let my guard down, the messages started coming in. First from distant relatives, then from old family friends I hadn't spoken to in years. "Your parents are struggling. Don't you think it's time to let the past go?" I know things were complicated, but they're still your family. They made mistakes, but do you really want to leave them with nothing? Each message made my stomach tighten, not with guilt, but with sheer disbelief. They had really gone that far, hadn't they? Reaching out to people who had never once cared about me before, spinning the story to make themselves look like the victims. In their version of events, I wasn't the abandoned child who had been cast aside. I was the ungrateful one, the selfish one, the heartless one who was punishing them for a few past mistakes. But the worst part? Some people actually bought it. I could see it in the way they spoke to me, the way they implied that my success meant I owed my parents something, as if money could erase the years of pain, rejection, and loneliness, as if a paycheck could make up for the nights I spent alone, wondering why the people who were supposed to love me the most couldn't even look at me. Then came Daniel, my cousin. The only one who had ever tried to stay neutral growing up, never fully defending my parents but never standing up for me either. He called me out of nowhere, and for some reason, I answered. Maybe I was curious. Maybe I just wanted to hear what angle they were trying now. "They're really struggling," he said after a bit of small talk, his voice careful, calculated. "They're scared they'll lose the house. They've got nothing saved up, no pension, no one else to turn to." I exhaled slowly, rubbing my temple. "And that's my problem because—" He hesitated. "Look, I'm not saying what they did was right, but you have money now. They don't. You can help them without it ruining your life. Doesn't that mean anything?" There it was. The same argument, just wrapped in a different voice. The idea that because I had survived, because I had thrived despite them, I now had the obligation to turn around and save the very people who had left me behind. I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. "They made their choices, Daniel," I said. "Now they get to live with them." His sigh was long and heavy. "So that's it?" I shrugged, my voice steady. "That's it." And for the first time, saying those words didn't feel cold. It felt like freedom. I expected Daniel to argue, to push harder, to guilt-trip me the way everyone else had. But instead, he was quiet. Maybe he finally understood that I wasn't budging, that I wasn't that scared, desperate kid anymore. "I don't know, man," he muttered after a long pause. "Feels like you're letting this define you." That made me laugh. A sharp, humorless sound. Letting this define me? As if I had been the one clinging to the past, as if I was the one who couldn't move on. No, the only people stuck in old cycles were my parents, reaching out not out of love, not out of regret, but because they needed something. They had defined me as disposable for years. Now they wanted to redefine me as their personal safety net. "You want to know what really defines a person, Daniel?" I asked, my voice even. "It's not one decision. It's a pattern of them." He didn't answer, but I could tell he was listening. They made their choice when they cut me off, when they refused to acknowledge me, when they acted like I didn't exist until they needed money. "That's what defines them," I said. "And this? This is just me making a choice of my own." I could hear him breathing on the other end, deep and uneven. For a second, I wondered if he might actually get it, if maybe, for once, someone in my so-called family would understand. But when he finally spoke, all he said was, "Guess there's nothing left to talk about then." And just like that, the call ended. I stared at my phone for a moment, waiting for something. An aftershock, a sliver of doubt, anything. But there was nothing. No guilt, no regret. Just the quiet realization that I had finally, completely disconnected from them. And it felt good. I wasn't waiting for them to change. I wasn't hoping for an apology that would never come, or an acknowledgement of the pain they had caused. I wasn't carrying the weight of their rejection anymore. Because their approval, their love, if it had ever truly existed, wasn't something I needed. Not anymore. I got up, stretched, and looked around my apartment. My space, built with my hard work, filled with things that I had earned. This was the life I had made for myself, without their help, without their validation. I realized that this, not them, not their regret, not their desperation, was what defined me. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Maybe another attempt to pull me back in. I didn't even look at it. Instead, I put my phone down, walked to the window, and took in the city below me. I had spent so much of my life looking back. But now, I was only looking forward. The messages didn't stop. If anything, they got more persistent. Calls from unknown numbers. Voicemails from my mother, her tone shifting between forced warmth and thinly veiled frustration. My father, who had once been content with silence, left a single message that was short but telling. "You're being unreasonable." Unreasonable. That was rich, coming from the man who had turned his back on me without a second thought. Unreasonable because I refused to be the child they had abandoned and then reclaimed when it was convenient. Unreasonable because I had learned how to survive without them, and now refused to let them reap the rewards of my struggle. But the thing that struck me the most? Not once did any of them say they were sorry. Not once did they acknowledge what they had done. Every message, every call, every word was framed around what they needed, how they were struggling, how I should do the right thing. but they never once asked how I had survived all these years without them. Because the truth was, they didn't care. They never had. And that's when it really hit me. They weren't reaching out because they wanted me back. They were reaching out because they had no one else. That thought settled in my chest like a quiet kind of victory. They had spent years pretending I didn't exist, pushing me away, treating me like I was disposable. And now they were the ones being ignored. Now they were the ones waiting for a response that would never come. I went about my life, focused on what actually mattered. My work, my future, the people who had supported me when I had nothing. I started saying yes to new opportunities, making plans that didn't involve looking over my shoulder, waiting for the past to catch up with me. And as time passed, the calls became less frequent. The messages slowed. They were finally starting to understand that I wasn't coming back. One afternoon I got a text from Daniel. Not a guilt trip, not another plea for family unity. Just 2 words. I get it. Weeks passed, and I felt like I was fully in control of my own life. My parents had lost their grip on me. Their words no longer held any weight, and even Daniel had stopped trying to play mediator. But that didn't mean they had given up entirely. One evening, as I was leaving for work, I spotted a familiar figure standing near the entrance to my building. My mother. She looked smaller than I remembered, dressed in a worn-out coat that hung loosely around her shoulders. I wasn't sure if it was the dim lighting or just time catching up with her, but for the first time she looked old. Not in the graceful way people age, but in the way stress and desperation wear a person down. I could have walked past her, pretended I didn't see her, the same way she had once pretended I didn't exist. But something in me, curiosity maybe, made me stop. She noticed me immediately, her eyes lighting up like she had been waiting all day for this moment. "I knew I'd find you here," she said, smiling as if we were an ordinary mother and child, casually running into each other. I didn't return the smile. "What do you want?" Her face fell slightly, but she recovered quickly. I wanted to see you." I let out a slow breath, my patience already wearing thin. "No, you didn't," I said. "You want something, so just say it." She hesitated, then sighed. "Can we go somewhere and talk?" I stared at her for a long moment, then shook my head. "No. Whatever you have to say it here." She shifted uncomfortably, glancing around as if hoping to avoid making a scene. "Your father's health isn't great," she admitted, her voice quieter now. "We've had some financial setbacks. We're struggling." There it was. The real reason she was here. I crossed my arms. "And now you're hoping the child you abandoned will swoop in and fix everything?" Her lips pressed together, a flicker of frustration breaking through her fragile act. "It's not like that," she insisted. "We're still your parents. We made mistakes, but you can't just turn your back on us." I laughed under my breath, shaking my head. "That's exactly what you did to me." She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the strap of her purse. "I know," she admitted. "And I regret it." The words hung between us, heavier than I expected. But regret wasn't the same as love. Regret wasn't enough to erase the years of pain. The nights I spent alone wondering why I wasn't good enough for the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. I studied her, waiting to feel something. Pity, anger, maybe even a sliver of forgiveness. But all I felt was detachment, like I was watching a stranger beg for help. "You regret it now," I said finally, "because you need me." She didn't deny it, and that was all I needed to hear. I turned without another word and walked away, leaving her standing there, just like she had once left me. I didn't look back. Not once. As I walked away, I expected something. A last-ditch plea, maybe even an apology that actually sounded real. But there was nothing. No desperate calls, no running after me, no acknowledgement that this was the moment she had truly lost me. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. By the time I got home, I felt nothing but certainty. I had spent years hoping for closure, thinking maybe one day my parents would see me as more than an inconvenience, more than a problem to erase. But they never would. The only reason they had reached out, the only reason they had regrets, was because they had run out of options. They didn't miss me. They missed what I could do for them. And I refused to be their safety net. A week passed with no contact. Then 2. Then a month. The messages stopped. The calls never came. It was like they had never tried to come back at all. And maybe that was for the best. I had no interest in playing their games anymore. No desire to keep reliving a past that no longer held power over me. And just like that, they became what they had always treated me as. A memory to be forgotten. Life moved forward, and so did I. Without the weight of their expectations, their neglect, their sudden neediness pressing down on me, I felt free. Freer than I had ever been. I built a life on my own terms, surrounded by people who had never once questioned my worth, people who had stood by me when I had nothing. Friends who became my family, a career I had fought for, and a sense of self that had nothing to do with their approval. One evening, as I sat in my apartment, sipping coffee and watching the city lights flicker in the distance, I let my mind drift back for a brief moment. To the version of me who once would have given anything to hear his parents say they loved him. To the child who had spent years aching for something that would never come, I wished I could tell him the truth. You don't need them. You never did. And with that, I let them go. For good.
My mom stole my college fund for my brother. Now she's begging me to pay her rent. I never believed in miracles. Not because I was cynical or jaded, but because life had taught me early on that they simply did not exist. Not for people like me. Hard work, perseverance, and relentless struggle were the only currencies that had any value in my world. That was what I had been raised to believe. The lesson my mother drilled into my head over and over again while making sure I understood that nothing would ever be handed to me. "You're smart," she would say, her voice always carrying that impatient edge, as if she resented the very fact that she had to acknowledge my efforts. "You don't need help. You'll figure it out just like you always do." She told me that so often I started to believe it. I buried myself in school, pushing through exhaustion, clinging to the idea that my efforts would be rewarded in the end. Because I had something most kids didn't. A promise, a college fund, a financial safety net that my parents had assured me would be there when the time came. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the security, the validation, the knowledge that at least in this one way, my future had been considered, that I mattered enough for them to plan ahead. But the illusion shattered the day I turned 18. I remember that conversation vividly. I had approached my mother with all the excitement and naivety of a teenager who still believed in fairness. It was the summer before college. The acceptance letters had rolled in, and I felt like I had control over my own fate. I had done everything right. Straight A's, extracurriculars, part-time jobs that stole my weekends but added glittering credentials to my applications. I had earned this. "Mom, I need to talk to you about the college fund," I said, standing in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter as I watched her pour herself a glass of juice. The words felt heavy in my mouth, a mix of excitement and nerves. I need to start sending in deposits soon. I expected reassurance. Maybe even a rare smile, a moment where she would finally acknowledge how hard I had worked. Instead, she sighed, her expression shifting into something unreadable, something I didn't recognize yet but would come to know as guilt wrapped in resentment. "About that," she muttered, swirling the wine in her glass like it was more interesting than my entire future. "The money is gone." It took a second for the words to sink in. "What do you mean, gone?" She exhaled sharply, like this conversation was a waste of her time. "I had to use it. Things came up." "Things came up?" I repeated, my voice hollow. My pulse pounded in my ears, my mind already racing through the possibilities. A medical emergency? A crisis? Something so dire that there had been no other choice but to drain the fund meant for my education? But her expression wasn't one of regret or pain. It was annoyance. Like I was the one being unreasonable. "For your brother," she said flatly, as if that explained everything. My breath caught in my throat. "You used my college fund for him." "Oh, don't be so dramatic." She rolled her eyes, taking a sip of wine before finally looking at me. "He needed it more than you did. You'll figure something out. You always do." It was in that moment that I realized the truth I had spent my entire life trying not to see. I was never the priority. I was never the child she looked at with pride, the one she saw as worthy of investment. That title belonged to him, Jason, the golden boy, the prodigal son, the one who could do no wrong, no matter how many times he failed, no matter how much money he wasted, no matter how many times he needed to be bailed out, and she had done it without a second thought. I don't remember how I left the kitchen, how I made it to my room without my legs giving out beneath me. All I remember is the suffocating weight in my chest, the realization that everything I had worked for had been stolen before I even had the chance to use it. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I packed my things and left. The years that followed were the hardest of my life. College should have been a time of discovery, of growth, of stepping into the world with excitement and hope. Instead, it was an unrelenting struggle. I worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs at a time, scraping together tuition payments, living off instant ramen and black coffee, running on fumes in sheer desperation. Every time I thought about quitting, about letting the weight of exhaustion and bitterness crush me. I remembered her words, "You'll figure something out." And I did. I clawed my way through. I took on extra shifts, applied for every scholarship, slept 4 hours a night, and gritted my teeth through the humiliation of watching my peers glide through school with financial support while I balanced textbooks and double shifts. I refused to break, because if I did, it meant she was right. It meant she had won. By the time I graduated, I had nothing left in me but raw determination, the kind that burns in your veins, that refuses to let you rest until you've taken back everything that was stolen from you. And I did. I built a life for myself, a career, a home, a bank account that no one could touch but me. I became everything she never believed I could be, without her, despite her. And as the years passed, I stopped thinking about her entirely. Until she called. The phone rang late one evening, an unknown number flashing across the screen. I almost ignored it, but something in my gut told me to answer. "Hello?" There was silence on the other end. Then, a voice I hadn't heard in years. "It's me," my mother said, her voice quieter than I remembered, laced with something that almost sounded like hesitation. I didn't respond. I let the silence stretch, waiting. Finally, she sighed. "I need help." A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. "Help?" She ignored my tone. I don't have enough to cover rent this month. Things have been difficult. Jason was supposed to..." She cut herself off, as if realizing too late that she had spoken the name that ruined everything. I let her sit in it. Let the silence swallow her whole. Finally I spoke, my voice devoid of warmth. "Figure it out." The words landed like a slap, and I heard something I had never expected from her. Panic. "Please," she whispered. "I have nowhere else to go." And just like that, the tables had turned. There was a time when hearing my mother's voice had the power to freeze me in place, to pull me back into that endless cycle of disappointment and aching, hollow longing. A time when a single call from her would have made my pulse quicken, my thoughts race, desperate for some semblance of approval or affection that would never come. That time was long gone. Now all I felt was a detached sort of curiosity, the same way one might watch a storm brewing on the horizon. She had called because she needed something. That much was obvious. Not to reconnect. Not because she regretted the years of neglect. Not because she wanted to acknowledge what she had done to me. No, she had dialed my number because she was desperate. Because she had exhausted every other option, and the child she once discarded was the only one left to turn to. I took my time responding, letting her discomfort settle between us. "You have nowhere else to go?" I repeated, tasting the words. There was a sharp inhale on the other end, as if she had hoped I wouldn't latch onto that particular admission. But I did. I clung to it like a vice, because it told me everything I needed to know. Jason wasn't helping her. The golden child, the son she had chosen over me again and again, the one she had poured every dime and every ounce of faith into. He was gone. Absent. Unreachable. Maybe unwilling. And now she was here, at my feet, hoping for scraps. A bitter part of me wanted to relish it, to drink in her humiliation, to make her beg for every word she had ever spoken to me in dismissal. But that part of me was still healing, still raw from wounds that never truly closed. I exhaled slowly, staring at the ceiling as I considered my next words. "How much?" The question came out colder than I intended. But I didn't correct it. I wanted her to hear the indifference, to understand that if I helped her, it would not be out of love. There was a pause before she answered. 2 months' rent. I raised an eyebrow. And after that, another pause, longer this time. I'll figure it out, she said weakly. And oh, how those words tasted like rusted iron in my mouth. The irony was almost painful. I wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, but because the universe had a twisted sense of humor. She had told me the exact same thing all those years ago when she stole my future and handed it to Jason. When she dismissed my pain as something I could figure out, while she coddled the son who never had to lift a finger. And now she was the one with no safety net, no college fund to fall back on, no golden boy to save her. Just me. and I wasn't feeling particularly generous. "You don't get to say that to me," I said, my voice quiet but laced with steel. "Not after everything." She let out a shaky breath, as if she had known this conversation wouldn't be easy, but still hoped for something softer. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Jason—" I cut her off, my patience snapping like brittle glass. "I don't want to hear about Jason." She flinched, or at least I imagined she did. There was no way to see it through the phone, but I knew her well enough to recognize the slight hitch in her breath, the hesitation in the way she swallowed back her words. Jason, Jason, Jason. Even now, when she was at her lowest, when she was the one begging for help, she couldn't stop bringing up his name, as if he were some inescapable ghost haunting both of us. I clenched my jaw, dragging a hand down my face. "Why isn't he helping you?" Silence. It stretched long and heavy between us, thick with something I couldn't quite place. Then, finally, "He left," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "He doesn't answer my calls. He—" She stopped, as if she couldn't bear to finish the thought. "He's gone." I let the words settle in my mind, rolling them over, picking them apart. Jason was gone, not dead, not in jail, not suffering, just gone, which meant he had made a choice. I knew my brother well enough to understand what that meant. He had always been the type to take what he needed and vanish when things got hard. It wasn't malice, not exactly, just an inherent selfishness, the kind that comes from knowing you'll always have someone else to clean up your mess. That someone had always been her, and now that she needed him, he had abandoned her, the same way she had abandoned me. "Wow," I muttered, shaking my head. "How poetic." She made a noise, something caught between a sigh and a sob. "I don't need a lecture." "No," I said, "but you need money, and I'm the only one who can give it to you. So why don't you try something new and be honest with me?" Another pause. Then, "I made a mistake." I went still. In all my years, in all the time I had spent raging at the injustice of it all, I had never expected to hear those words from her. My mother, who had always been so sure, so convinced that she had done what was best, that I had never been wronged, that Jason had simply needed more than I did. A mistake. It was a pitiful admission, small and broken, but it was there. And I saw her for what she truly was, not a villain, not a monster, not the looming figure that had dominated my childhood with cold indifference. Just a woman who had gambled everything on the wrong child, and lost. I exhaled through my nose, pressing my fingers against my temple. "And what do you expect me to do with that?" She didn't answer right away. Then, "I don't know," she admitted. I don't have anyone else." That part at least was true. Jason had left her. Her so-called friends, the ones who had always admired the way she doted on her son, had likely distanced themselves the moment she became more of a burden than an asset. And now, here she was, facing the consequences of her choices. And me? I had the power now. The realization settled over me like a weighted blanket, suffocating and intoxicating all at once. I could end this conversation right now, let her figure it out, the same way she had told me to. Let her struggle. Let her feel the full weight of what it meant to be cast aside. Or I could make her earn it. I could set conditions, make her beg, make her work for my help, the way she had forced me to work for everything. A slow, cold satisfaction curled in my chest. Yes, that was what I would do, because mercy was a privilege, and she had never given it to me. "Fine," I said, my voice carefully measured. "I'll help you." A breath of relief escaped her. "Thank you." "But," I interrupted, my voice sharp, "there will be conditions, and if you don't like them, you're free to figure it out on your own." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening, and I was the one holding the power. The silence on the other end of the line was suffocating. It stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words and years of unresolved resentment. I could practically hear her struggling to swallow whatever bitter response she wanted to give, but she wasn't in a position to argue. Not anymore. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she exhaled shakily. "Conditions?" she echoed, her voice tight, wary. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of her desperation settle over me like a warm, suffocating blanket. Let her feel it, I told myself. Let her sit in the same uncertainty she forced on me when she drained my future dry and told me to figure it out. You heard me, I said, my tone cool, detached. I'll help you, but it'll be on my terms. If you don't like it, you can go find Jason. Oh, wait, that's right. He's nowhere to be found. She inhaled sharply, as if I had struck her, and for a fleeting moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You don't have to be cruel, she whispered, her voice unsteady. I laughed, the sound low and bitter. No, I don't. But let's not pretend that kindness was ever part of our relationship. Silence. She didn't deny it. I shifted, glancing out the window at the city skyline, the glow of streetlights painting long shadows against my walls. How much is your rent? $1,200 a month, she said after a pause, as if she wasn't sure whether admitting it would help or hurt her case. And I'm already behind on 2 months. I clicked my tongue, pretending to think about it. $2,400, I mused. That's a lot of money for someone who never gave a damn about me. She stopped herself, as if realizing that whatever excuse she was about to give would be useless. What do you want? There it was. The shift. The acknowledgement that she wasn't in control anymore. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the desk. First, I want you to say it. Say what? She asked, though I could hear the dread in her voice. That you stole my college fund and gave it to Jason, I said, my voice even, almost clinical. I want to hear you admit it. A sharp intake of breath. Say it. A long pause. Then finally, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't catch it. I stole your college fund and gave it to Jason. I closed my eyes, letting the confession settle into my bones. I had known it for years, but hearing her say it, that was something else entirely. Good, I murmured. Now, tell me why. Because he needed it, she said immediately, and I nearly hung up the phone right then and there. Try again, I snapped. Why did you choose him over me? She was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer at all. But then, because I thought he would be the one to take care of me, she admitted, her voice hollow. I thought if I helped him, he would become successful. I thought... She trailed off, as if saying it out loud was forcing her to confront just how badly she had miscalculated. I thought he would always choose me. I let out a slow, measured breath. And he didn't. No, she said barely above a whisper. He didn't. A twisted part of me wanted to tell her I wasn't surprised. Jason had always been selfish, always took without giving. The only difference was that this time, she was the one left with nothing. All right, I said, leaning back again. Here's what's going to happen. I'll cover your rent, but in exchange I want full control of your finances. What? You heard me, I said smoothly. You'll send me access to your bank account, your bills, everything. I'll handle your expenses from now on. If I see you spending money on anything unnecessary, alcohol, expensive takeout, whatever, I'm done. You'll live on exactly what I give you, nothing more. You can't just... I can, I cut her off. And if you want my help, you'll accept it. No arguments, no complaints, no more playing the victim. You lost the right to ask for favors the moment you chose Jason over me. So if you want to keep a roof over your head, you'll do it my way. Understand? Silence. Then, after what felt like an eternity, fine. I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. Good. You'll send me the details tomorrow. If you don't, I won't be answering your calls again. She exhaled shakily. Thank you, she murmured, the words stiff and unnatural on her tongue. I said nothing, just hung up. Because as far as I was concerned, she didn't deserve my gratitude. She only deserved to understand what it felt like to be powerless. And I was going to make sure she never forgot it. The next morning, my inbox lit up with an email from my mother. No subject line, no greeting, just a cold, clinical list of bank statements, overdue bills, and rent notices, each one a testament to how far she had fallen. I skimmed through them, my expression unreadable, my emotions a tightly coiled knot of satisfaction, disbelief, and something far more complicated. She was the one waiting on me, the one powerless, the one at my mercy. I took my time before responding. Received. I'll take care of it. That was it. No warmth, no reassurances, no empty promises of things getting better. Because they wouldn't. I transferred exactly $2,400 to her landlord's account and nothing more. No extra funds to cushion her lifestyle, no spare change for indulgences. She was going to live within the limits I dictated, just like I had been forced to scrape by for years while she lavished Jason with every opportunity she had stolen from me. The power shift was intoxicating, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. A week passed before she called again. I considered letting it go to voicemail, just to remind her that I wasn't at her beck and call, that the control she had wielded over me for years had disintegrated into dust the moment Jason abandoned her. But eventually, I answered. "What?" I said, not bothering with pleasantries. I wanted to thank you," she said awkwardly, as if forcing those words out was physically painful. "For paying the rent. I would have been evicted otherwise." "I know," I said coolly. Silence. "I also wanted to ask," she hesitated, then plunged forward, "about next month's rent. I know you said you'd control my finances, but what?" I asked, my voice dangerously soft. She swallowed audibly. "I was hoping you could send me a little extra, just to cover groceries. Things have been tight." I let out a humorless laugh. "No? No?" she echoed, as if she couldn't comprehend the word. "No," I repeated. "I will cover your rent and utilities. Everything else, you figure it out." Her breath hitched. Isn't that what you told me?" I continued, voice deceptively calm. "That I'd figure it out? That I didn't need help? That Jason was the one who deserved it more?" She didn't answer. "What happened to that confidence?" I pressed, my grip tightening around the phone. "Where's that certainty you had when you drained my college fund without a second thought?" "Please," she whispered, and I realized this was the first time I had ever heard that word from her. A lifetime of memories rushed back. The cold indifference in her voice when she dismissed my concerns about money. The way she would sigh impatiently whenever I asked for something as simple as school supplies, yet would hand Jason hundreds of dollars without a second thought. The times I had cried myself to sleep, stomach aching from hunger, while she cooked elaborate meals for the son she adored. I closed my eyes. "No," I said again, final this time. "This is your mess. You deal with it." I'll do better," she stammered. "I can change. I just need—" "No, you won't," I interrupted. "People like you don't change. You only regret when it's too late, when there's nothing left for you to take." "That's not true," she whispered, but it lacked conviction. "Yes, it is," I said, my voice eerily calm. "You gambled on Jason and you lost. You spent your entire life thinking that he was the one who would take care of you, that he would always be there, but the moment things got tough, he abandoned you." I let the words sink in, let them fester. "And the only reason you're calling me now," I continued, "is because I was your backup plan, the one you never thought you'd need. But you do. And that kills you, doesn't it?" Her breathing was ragged on the other end of the line. "I'm sorry," she choked out. God, I messed up. I know I did, but I'm still your mother." I exhaled slowly. "No," I said softly. "You were never my mother. You were Jason's mother. I was just the inconvenience you had to tolerate." Silence. And in that silence I heard something I had never heard before. Defeat. Not anger, not deflection, not excuses. Just the hollow, painful realization that I was right. I let her sit in it. "This will be the last time I help you," I said, my voice steady. "I've repaid my debt to you. You raised me, gave me a roof over my head, and in return, I saved yours. We're even now." "Wait," she started, panic creeping into her voice. "Goodbye, Mom," I said and hung up. I sat there for a long time staring at the phone in my hand. Then, finally, I deleted her number, setting myself free.